You're listening to Super Power Up with multidimensional master, superpower expert, and former counterintelligence agent, Tonya Dawn Recla. If you're ready to disrupt reality, then sit down, strap in, and prepare to experience the show that proves there is no spoon.
Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Recla, your superpower expert, and I am pretty ecstatic today about this conversation. I think you're going to be excited about it. Actually, I know you're going to be excited. More importantly, you're going to get a lot of, a lot of froggy throats and coughing. You're going to get a lot of wealth of information out of this around the transformational world, right? So many of you are starting to step into this, like, whatever space from the real world, right? The more linear, conservative, industry standard kind of conservative-esque structured existence. And you're looking into this transformational space because something happened, you had a near-death experience, God talked to you, angels appeared, or you just all of a sudden woke up and realized, wait, maybe there's more than this. And you're looking at it going, what is going on here? It's kind of crazy, right? And then some of you have been camping out in this space forever, or at least for a while, and you're like, what? Well, it's cool. Come on, it's weird, because we just accept that it's kind of weird, and we don't think about it anymore. And how do we have conversation about what it is? What are we in pursuit of? Why are we in pursuit of it? Is it even worthy to pursue? And all of that yumminess that goes into that dialogue. And so today we're talking about the nuts and bolts of transformation. Say that word again, the nuts and bolts of transformation. And we have Dr. Tony Ortega on with us, author of #Are You Here Yet? How to STFU and Show Up for Yourself. So this is going to be a rather colorful conversation, and real and in there and raw and deep, because that is the work, folks. So sit down, strap in, hold on tight, because this is going to be a fun ride. Please join me in welcoming Tony to the show. Welcome, Tony. How are you?
I am doing fabulous. How are you, dear?
I am so excited about this conversation, and I'm going to tell you why really quickly, because that, of course, all the stuff that I just got done saying, but also this is the reason for, it's the essence of the entire existence of the network, and why it's been such an amazing success, because it harnesses this, which is, you do similar work to what we do. Your stories are very different than my story. Your vernacular is different than mine. Your ways, your doorways are different. And we get to come together in this conversation and say, wow, let me shine my light on your brilliance and illuminate that, and say, this is the beautiful exchange that we get to have. This is what we're invited into if we choose to do the really hard work in persevering through that. And that includes not abdicating, which I know you're a staunch supporter of that as well. And so that's what really excites me about it. But before we dive too deeply into that, I have to ask. I don't have to ask. I absolutely want to ask, and I'm choosing to ask, what are your superpowers?
Being a comic book fan since I could remember reading, I could tell you what I love my superpowers to be. But it's funny because, and you even said the word just a little bit ago, if I were to pinpoint one superpower, is perseverance. Because I don't know if it's because I'm Latino, I don't know because I'm 52, I don't know because I had amazing parents, but I just refuse to give up. I have had the crap hit the fan quite a few times in 52 years. And while I may have laid down for a little bit, I was like, nope. There's just something in me that refuses to lie down and just accept mediocre.
I love that. It's when I'm in a particularly pondering kind of state of mind, that is one of the spaces I go to. Is I remember reading a book called Grit, and they were talking about how it was one of the one of the military academies was having difficulty because they could assess for a lot of things, but they couldn't assess for resiliency and grit. And brought this woman in her team in, I think, to kind of see if you could come up with some mechanism to predict how people are going to respond when they're thrown in the fire. And in this work, in this transformational world, that question comes to me a lot, because inevitably people say, well, why you? How did you do this? Right? I'm like, I actually don't know. Like, I just know that, just like what you gave voice to, that was my experience also. Like, it didn't feel like necessarily a choice to me, although I take full ownership of stepping into it, but it was almost a foregone conclusion for me. And but that's not true for everybody. And so I haven't really come to a good conclusion. Have you? Do you have my answer?
I don't know if I have an answer. I have my answer. I know that I've had windows of time in my life where literally the angels are singing, the clouds are open, Channing Tatum is naked in my bedroom. I mean, everything is wonderful.
Perfect.
Everything is wonderful. I've had those bursts. I've had those moments. And it's not that I'm chasing the feeling of that moment. I know that when I feel like crap, a lot of it is self-created. Yes, there are external factors that will trigger these negative feelings, but I'm the one taking these negative feelings and running with it. And I compare the two of these moments I feel great about myself, because the majority of my life I felt like crap about myself, to where I'm at today. And it's like, I'm tired of feeling bad. Even, I shared with you before the show this morning, I got myself into this rut of literally saying, is it worth it? All this hard work I'm putting in, is it worth it? And literally one of my dear friends had to say, what's the title of your book? And so I was like, are you telling me I have to STFU and show up for myself? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, and I giggled because, that's the answer. I needed to shut up, stop complaining, and show up for myself and bring myself back to the space where I won't give up. I won't lie in that puddle of depression and sadness and really self-absorption.
And it's so true. And I love that you framed it up in that way. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to dive into that and help those individuals who are sitting in that exact space right there. But Tony, before we go to break, where can people go to find out more about you?
My website is www.drtonyortega.com. Don't spell out the word doctor. It's just DR.
Perfect. Awesome, folks. We will be right back. We're talking today with Dr. Tonya Ortega about the nuts and bolts of transformation. Stay with us. You're not going to want to miss this, folks. We'll be right back. Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Recla, Executive Director of Superpower Experts, and we want to thank each of you for making Superpower Up the #1 podcast network for personal development and spiritual growth. Because people like you have the courage to say that mindfulness, healthy living, disrupting reality, the pursuit of consciousness, responsible entrepreneurship, and radical parenting matter. We now amass over 1 million downloads monthly in more than 90 countries. Our numbers keep growing because there are far more people willing to live divergently than mass media wants to acknowledge. For you, the change makers, the light bearers, the way showers, we say thank you. If you're ready to take the next step in your evolution, go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower Quiz. And as Neva Lee Recla, our youngest podcaster, likes to remind us, remember, we all have superpowers and we can change the world. Awesome. We're back. You're listening to Disrupt Reality. This is Tonya Dawn Recla, and I'm talking today with Dr. Tonya Ortega about the nuts and bolts of transformation. And prior to the break, Tony and I were bantering back and forth about this kind of interesting thing about how do people respond when they're in the fire, right? When the shit hits the fan, when it's like, hey, there's a little bit of friction happening here. And it was interesting because one of the things when I was kind of sitting and setting the container for this conversation, I pray. Almost exclusively, my life is a walk of faith at this point, and so it's not. It would be unusual for me not to have the divine involved in some capacity. And what came through was this idea of, and I'll just read this sentence. It says, "While transformation sounds pretty and conjures images of butterflies, the reality is it yanks, pulls, and stretches us into new uncomfortableness, so we can continue the progressive walk toward a new comfortableness." And on it goes, right? And that's kind of the cyclical thing and process thing that I was really resistant to drawing out initially, because what if people don't experience it that way? But I find that for the most part that's a fair kind of construct, and it seems to help us a little bit relax into it, because otherwise it just feels like we're not getting anywhere, right? We're not really actually doing anything, kind of that space that you were talking about. What do you do in addition to, having really great lifelines and people to support you? What is your inner dialogue when maybe before you hit that point? How do you keep yourself from going into that space?
Well, I'm a big fan of A Course in Miracles, and it talks about the voice of fear, and they call it the ego. So I've gotten really in touch with what the ego sounds like. I know when my ego is talking, and I know when my higher self is talking. Usually the ego voice is very loud. It's very negative. It's very pejorative. It is just a real big dickhead, I'll tell you. And, and then that higher self voice is softer. It's not very woo-woo. It's just very like, hey, calm down kind of thing. It's almost like like a Woodstock person.
I was gonna say it's chilling at Woodstock. Yes,
Yeah,
we're totally in sync. I love it.
Right? Kind of like, hey, relax, And so that ego voice was basically my best friend for a good chunk of my life. And so I know the difference between the two. So I literally I pretend like or I feel like that's like an aspect of myself. It's not me. That's not really me talking. It's just a piece of me talking. So it's like, you know what? Sit down, STFU, I'm gonna do this. I had to do that so many times in writing either one of my books. The voice would be like, no one's going to buy this book. They're going to criticize you. The psychological community is going to say this. The spiritual community is going to say this. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm still writing it.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to hear you say that, folks. Really, really, truly, you are not the only one who has doubts. In fact, I would say, and I have said many times because I have a podcast and that's what I do. I talk. And about this idea of I would say that my own self-doubt was really my secret weapon through a lot of it. Of course, that can be evolved and it turns into kind of this motivating, like making sure that you're checking in and you're holding yourself accountable. And I often, will ask my husband, how do I know that I'm not doing X, Y, and Z? He's like, because you're asking the question. It's like a crazy person never asks if they're crazy, right? And so I remember in college, a friend of mine, I'm like, I don't want to respond to this like in an egotistical way. And he's like, the very fact that you're asking the question says that you're probably pretty safe, kind of diving around in that because you're at least aware of that piece of it. And it's such a great kind of reminder of, well, who are you speaking as, right? And there's a difference about speaking about as the observer of that little part of you that wants to kind of chime in versus speaking as that piece, right? And it sounds crazy, folks, but there is real value and a wealth of knowledge about yourself if you do that level of work. And you start going, okay, wait, what is happening inside of me? Like, where is this coming from? And that's a big part of why superpower experts exist. And we really mean superpowers in the sense that a lot of you are awakening to psychic abilities and mind reading and telepathy and empathy and everything. And it's like, what is it? What do you do with it, right? And everybody thinks you're going crazy. Specifically, if you have a religious background, for a lot of you, that's super challenging. And so we have to start talking about what this stuff is and what it is not. And that I shared with Tony before we came on. I was looking at his book, and in chapter 8, the thing that pops out at me the best, and again, I'm just going to read this. Excuse me. I don't know how to do this is the mental trap. Okay, I am not going to talk like this. One moment. Okay, there we go. Much better. I didn't know how to do this is the mental trap we fall into that creates sales for these self-proclaimed gurus and life coaches. You may not know the mechanics of how to do something, but you know what you need to do to acquire that knowledge. And then you go on, of course, that so much information is at our fingertips. Sounds like a conversation I had with Neva recently. We were at the library, we saw encyclopedias, and I'm like, you don't even, okay, never mind. We'll look at Siri, it's like, and so it's this awareness of that tendency we have to go into that abdication, and it does make us really ripe for an offer, because we broadcast out at a subconscious level, help me, help me, help me, help me. And nefarious or not, most people who get into the transformational space are very well-meaning. And if you're sending out subconscious vibes to say, help me, help me, help me, they are going to want to help you. And they're going to offer you a service that costs money to help you. But you have no idea that you're sending out signals going, help me, help me, help me, help me. Therefore, you have no idea what you actually want help with. Makes sense?
Or if I could play devil's advocate for a second, though, also, I totally agree with what you're saying, but also, if we approach this transformational space from that I can't do it, I don't know how to do it, and take that further along into there's something wrong with me, what we're sending out is these vibes, and we're going to attract these charlatans who are going to take advantage of you and sell you courses and products and seminars that you don't necessarily really need.
For sure. And not even devil's advocate, preach on, brother, preach on. That's absolutely the next level underneath of that. And it's not innocent, right? We have those mechanisms inside of us because they perpetuate our own discontent. And as long as we're discontent, we're not going to take action. We're not going to move. We're not going to face it. We're not going to look at it and go, wait a second. Wait, why was I afraid of this? Because as long as it can keep you in fear, you can't see it clearly.
Yep.
And so how do we encourage growth and development? Do it in a way that says it's okay to get support. It's okay to get help. It's okay to not want to do it alone. Like not everybody wants to, right? That's why communities exist and everything else that are in alignment with that. What advice do you have for people who, don't want to fall into that trap like you've identified, but yet want to lean into something? How can they be discerning in that?
One of the lessons I always teach my clients and I practice myself is, what are my motives in doing so? So if I'm seeking a transformational path, my motive or our motive needs to be one of, hey, I'm okay. I want to take it next level and let me see who's done it before me and see which one complements, big word, complements my life and will complement this transformational journey and not like complete it. I always tell folks who are dating, oh, this is my other half. I'm like, no, sister, you are a complete person all by yourself. This is not your other half. Relationships, I'm sorry, Austin Powers and Dr. Evil, relationships do not complete you. If they do, call me. We got some sessions planned.
I like it. That's an offer for sure.
Relationships, transformational process complements your life. Get on this path of transformation, knowing with the capital KNOW, blah, 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 that you have everything it takes, not the information, but the ability to carry through whatever information is given to you, apply it and make it your own. Listen, we have enough, and I adore her. We have enough Marianne Williamsons. We don't need, Marianne Williamson 2.0. Let's, get Tony Ortega out there. Let's get, so-and-so out there. Be your own vision or version of this transformational path, not a carbon copy.
Beautiful. Well, and you can't do it anyway. Nobody can pull that off. It literally is impossible. So you can try, but you're far better off synthesizing aspects that you admire in other people and kind of crafting your own version of what resonates deeply with you. And I will say, and this, it wasn't always this way. In fact, I'm, my 10 years ago old self would have said, thought you were crazy if you suggested I would be speaking this. But what I find is that those individuals are clients who have a really strong foundation in faith, either some spiritual belief or perhaps a religious belief, but a religious belief really well infused with the spiritual, have a far easier time with this because they know what their internal compass is. It's not, I don't know that it's a requirement. I would never dare to say that. I do know that it makes it easier for a lot of people. And so if you're not someone who sits in that space, perhaps it's worth at least pursuing the quandary of like, what is my internal compass? Like kind of at the highest essence, like who do I believe myself to be? And that gets into the like, and why am I here? Because if you don't have a sense of at least some very vague concept of how the world works or what you believe the world to be, and therefore who you are within it, it's really challenging when you come up against decisions like, should I do this? And should I do this? And should I do that? How do you make a decision if you don't know where to come back to, right? What is it in alignment with what exactly? And so you may not come up with an answer right away. You may not ever come up with an answer, but I do think that it's a worthwhile pursuit.
Well, I want to add to that, if I may, because one of the things I encounter in my practice, in my clients, they walk into my office, they know I have some sort of spiritual beliefs, right? Because there's crystals and Ganesh, and there's all kinds of things in my office. And so, but a lot of clients, I work with the LGBT population mostly, and a lot of gay men just are not with the whole spiritual thing. And so when the conversation does come up, I'm like, okay, let's take the word spiritual, let's take the word religious out of it. Let's
Mm-hmm.
call it higher thought. And this
Beautiful.
higher thought, it can be based on a value system. What is it that you value? You value love, you value whatever it is that you value, and let that be that internal compass that guides
Mm-hmm.
you in these decisions that you want to make in your transformation. So I
Perfect.
would venture to say you don't need to be spiritual, but you have to have some sort of internal value system that's a little
Mm-hmm.
bit higher than our day-to-day stuff to do the work of transformation.
Perfect reframe. Absolutely perfect. And that's a fantastic place to start. Some of you didn't start there. Some of you started in religious households, and that's
Yep.
been your pursuit. Some of you, the concept of spirituality is just like, huh? Like, what's the big deal? Like, of course I'm that, right? But not everybody got that memo, right? Not everybody grew up in that specific style house. So it's like, and the diversity is undeniable at this point, and we have to figure out how to make connections for all of that, right? How to not connections, how to make space
Hmm.
for all of it. And a lot of it leads you to, you mentioned the Course in Miracles, it leads you to this awareness that like God is in nothing, excuse me, until God is in everything, right?
Right.
And and that's a weird kind of thing because the stages prior to that are very full of discernment in the sense of right or wrong, good or bad, does this fit? And then when you move into that kind of both and dialogue to eventually move into the non-dualistic dialogue, it's a challenging kind of thing because you kind of have to drop that worldview and put on this lens. And so, Tony, my final question for you on this one is, why are you so passionate about this, and what is it that you hope it lends itself to in terms of the work that you do?
Wow. So why am I so passionate about it? Because it's been a journey for me, pretty much from the word go. I know that, I was raised in the Catholic Church and they would teach these things, and my internal self, that higher self, was like, no, Tony, that's not right for you. I did the Christian church for a while. I was in 12 steps for a while. I was very involved with, light worker communities and with Landmark and stuff like that. And there was still pieces of that was just like, this isn't 100% for me, but some of it is. And, it got to a point about a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago, when I was working on this book, of let this be a personal application manual of all the higher thought, psychological, spiritual, that I've learned, over the year and have incorporated into my life, to then teach it to other people, to encourage other people who are scared of, not to throw shade at anybody, but someone like Tony Robbins scares me, uh, and a lot of people spend a ton of money on this guy, and I'm like, but the thing is that he seems so powerful and he has it all together. And whether he does or doesn't, I don't know. I don't even know the man, but, you don't have to follow a specific person. What you need to follow is what's right for you. And that's what I'm hoping, particularly this chapter that you keep referring to, which is chapter 8 of my book.
Oh, I
Uh,
loved it. I
it,
loved it.
it's actually kind of my favorite too. That one in the drama queen chapter, people tend to love that one. Um, but it's really just, my what I hope my message always is here's all this stuff, make it yours.
Beautiful. Beautiful. My favorite quote is Montaigne. I have gathered a posy of other men's flowers, and simply the thread that binds them is mine own.
Oh,
Um, and
perfect.
it's such a beautiful depiction of how we can walk this world. But you have to be willing to look at all the flowers, right? Because anything that's outside of it that you feel like you have to keep separate from yourself in some capacity is outside of what you're able to integrate. And the value of being able to look at something and say, okay, like I don't have to follow that. I don't have to consume it. I don't have to adopt it, but I can appreciate the divinity within it.
Yep.
Even the quote unquote bad stuff, folks, when you start looking from that lens, you're walking a transformational journey, and it will change you and your life and the projection around you. So but it's an incremental process, and it's a
Yes.
true dedication to walking that. And I can't imagine ever doing anything but that. So, that's my world. Anyway, so Tonya, you're delightful. I really, really appreciate you coming on the show, and we appreciate the work that you're doing in the world and your courage in doing it in your way. Where can people go to find out more about you?
So you can find me on social media, usually Dr. Tony Ortega, Dr. Tony Ortega. Instagram, you could usually get the real raw version of me. Some of the other platforms I can't stand, but Instagram is definitely my jam. But be prepared. You're going to get, rawness, and you're going to get authenticity. If that's not your thing, then hey, don't come follow me. Or my website, drtonyortega.com. And if any listeners out there have any questions on how to start this path, on how, transformation and stuff like that, please hit me up on any of the, my email is on my website. Please hit me up. I am more than happy to answer questions. The only questions I don't answer are the requests for nude pictures on social media.
Oh man, see how you are? All right, folks. Sorry to disappoint you, but you had to throw that one out. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much. And as always, we'll have the link to his site on our page. So make sure you go to superpowerexperts.com. Download the app, folks. You can stream your favorite show at any time. We recommend a podcast a day for attunement. So take care, everyone. And again, thank you for your loyalty. We appreciate you. Tony, thank you for joining us. And until next time, folks. Oh, my absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much. And go out, folks, uncover your superpowers and change the world. Take care, everyone.
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the superpower quiz today.